Funding for Market Journal is provided by the Nebraska Corn Board.
Growing more with less is the mantra of Nebraska's corn farmers, and they're using incredible technology to do it. Soil moisture monitors let them know when their crop needs water and how much. GPS systems eliminate overlaps in the field, saving fuel and money. New hybrids reduce the use of pesticides and increase yields. When you're talking new technology and innovation, Nebraska corn farmers are all ears. Nebraska's family corn farmers, sustaining innovation.
Market Journal, television for agricultural business decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine, and major funding for Market Journal is provided by the Nebraska Corn Board.
Welcome to this week's edition of Market Journal. I'm Jeff Wilkerson. On this episode, Mike Briggs describes negative margins in the cattle feeding sector. Dave Goeller discusses working with your banker. Randy Pryor talks about improving efficiency in crop production. And Terry Griffin explains how crop insurance could use big data. Mike Briggs is our cattle market analyst this week. While the cost of beef is coming down for the consumer, per head losses are accelerating in the feedlot. The average price of ground beef fell in October to its cheapest level since August 2014. But according to the USDA, cattle marketed last month lost more than $500 per head, marking the 11th consecutive month of negative feeding margins. The latest Cattle on Feed report showed placements in October were 4% below last year, while marketings were down 3% and the lowest for the month since data began in 1996. We talked with Mike Tuesday morning and started by looking at cattle price movement over the month of November.
Well, you know, we used the term last time, dumpster fire, still raging. Got a big, nasty dumpster fire going on. And for the time being, I don't see it go away. We have got to get rid of these big cattle. We are slaughtering roughly, harvesting 20,000 cattle less a week than we were last year. And the report came out last week from the government that we produced like 2.37% more beef on that many less cattle. Until we get rid of these big cattle, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, the last time we talked, the market had taken a dive. You thought it might bounce off. It did. Saw life for a little bit, then came back down. What's going on? Is it just the supply?
That's a great question. You've got a struggle. You've got a micro struggle and a macro struggle. The long-term trend of the cattle market is down, and you've got funds that follow long-term trends, and the funds have been pounding on this thing because they think the long-term is down, and I agree with them. But you've got a micro deal there. You've got several months here where we have not placed cattle. Well, guess what? Eventually that's going to show up. The question is even though we have less numbers, are we going to continue to make them so big that we still actually have a larger supply of beef when we get done? And the more you do that, the longer this market's going to stay in a dumpster fire.
Are the discounts increasing for those bigger cattle going out?
Great question. They stopped discounting these cattle, which tells me we're coming to the end of it because, and they all bemoan it, they all complain about it. Well, I'm talking about the packers. And it's real simple, guys. You want us to quit doing it, discount them, not discounting them. So it tells me they see the end of the pile of big cattle, but I don't know where that end is. Hopefully it's within the next couple, 3 weeks.
The USDA has tracked not only big cattle going out, but big coming in. So this year they're saying that 800 pounders coming into the feedlot, they'd normally make up a quarter of the market share. But now they're taking up 40% of what actually comes into the feedlot. Does that hold consistent?
Absolutely, and that's gonna have an effect because you're still gonna have big cattle producing lots of beef. We've seen virtually or very little calf movement this fall because the decrease in the price, the rancher didn't want to take the hit, so he's weaning them, he's backgrounding them. Sometime those got to come. Well, those are going to be big. You're going to continue to see big cattle until either the economics of the cost of gain versus the sale price changes, or until you see consistent discounts by the packer to where we just can't do it anymore. but the economics say make them big, and that's what we're going to do.
Hate to ask where margins are right now.
They are dumpster fire. I like that term. They're brutal. They're $300, $400, and $500 losses. And it's not just because the market is so bad. That's a contributing factor, but people paid too much for those cattle, never really had a chance to lay them off, and now we're all in this big giant waller hoping it ends pretty soon.
When do you think you could see profitable margins again?
Great question. It may be until the cattle that are coming in now, because we've beaten the feeder price up so bad, it might not be till the cattle that are coming in now go out. And so it may be a while. There may not be good margins until March, April, May, maybe.
On the flip side, where are the margins for the packer at?
He's doing pretty good. The packer has done a tremendous job of managing supply, not overkilling their supply, over-harvesting, not overusing their supply and getting themselves in trouble where they've got to go compete for limited supplies of cattle. They've done a great job, but part of the thing that's either allowed them to or not, our demand on the consumer end, it seems like 1 pound too much is 1 pound too many, so they can't push the beef. We're not moving enough beef. I know there's a lot of complaints by people that the retailer has not lowered his prices, and it's true, but he contends he's selling it.
Would you say then that lower beef, and beef is coming down, it's becoming cheaper, doesn't have a big impact?
No, it does, but it's a delayed impact because the retailer does not lower retailer moves like a glacier. He doesn't raise his prices very fast, he doesn't lower his prices very fast. You know, at some point, hopefully the American public wakes up and goes, gosh, this stuff is cheap, but you still got the problem of competing meats where pork and chicken are virtually free. And so that beef can't get too far away on that spread. It's not gonna happen.
Thoughts on corn prices?
That's not going anywhere either. You've had a tremendous harvest, you have big supply of corn, you don't have very much export demand. Ethanol market is struggling a little bit because you've got cheap oil. That's not gonna change. I don't think corn goes anywhere. It's one of these deals where it's gonna have to go down to a price where it creates demand. When you had $7 and $8 corn, you destroyed demand. To get that demand back, it's gonna be cheaper. It's not going anywhere.
I want to talk about the weather here as we close out. We're talking on Tuesday. There is a chance of more rain or snow coming later in the week. Tell me where or how performance has been and kind of what you're looking at as we close out.
That's one of the, you can say good things about bad weather. It's gonna cap these big cattle off. It's really gonna hurt performance. As you can see behind me, it's a little muddy. And if we get wet again this late in the year, we're probably gonna live with mud all year. And so I'm hoping against hope that we can miss the storm this week, because after this week, it's gonna freeze up and maybe we can have some manageable feedlot conditions. If we don't, that's gonna be really hard on performance. It is gonna keep weights down, which I think long-term will benefit the market, but it's gonna come out of your pocket a little bit.
Next week, Jeff Peterson from Heartland Farm Partners will join us to look at corn and soybean markets. Argentine farmers could become more competitive with other international producers as a result of the country's presidential election last Sunday. Argentina's new president will be Mauricio Macri, who has said he'll drastically alter farm policies, including eliminating taxes and quotas on corn and wheat, as well as changing Argentina's soybean export tax. To learn more about why the election in South America could impact U.S. farmers, you can view our interview with DTN's Alastair Stewart from the October 30th episode of Market Journal. The USDA is expecting U.S. net farm income to suffer the largest single-year drop since 1983. The latest forecast, released Tuesday, shows 2015 net farm income at $55.9 billion, down more than 38% from last year. The agency expects crop receipts to be down nearly 9% and livestock receipts to fall 12%. Looking at the ag financial realm, earlier this week we talked with Nebraska Extension's Dave Goeller about the loan process between a borrower and a lender. We started by asking why it's important to have a positive relationship with your commercial ag banker.
Ag bankers are pretty important to the success of most farms and ranches in the state. And you know, the idea of developing a good relationship is just good business, I think, from the perspective of of someone who wants and needs to borrow some money to make operating purchases and land purchases and all kinds of things.
When that ag banker thinks about evaluating a borrower, what things go into that decision?
Well, small town bankers, I think, have a bit of a different equation than maybe some of the larger lenders. But all bankers, all lenders are going to be looking at what's the collateral? What collateral are we going to use to secure the loan? If for some reason the individual can't make the payments, what collateral is available to be liquidated and recover the costs? So collateral is going to be a big one. Cash flow is another one. What does it look like when the income and expense items are all added together and family living is included and debt service and payments are all included? Is there a cushion? We're seeing a lot of folks going into this next season with a real tight cash flow, some maybe negative even.
You had said that determining your cash flow and your costs are kind of a pain that some people might see, but it could be beneficial.
Some people will tell me, well, I have to do this for my lender. And I always like to think of it, it's a management tool as well, because if you can't sit down and write your numbers and come up with some good statistical and data and some good information, how are you going to make your decisions? Coffee shop is one way, but there's lots of better ways, in my opinion, and doing a good set of books and a good set of cash flow projections, analyzing the balance sheet, looking at what the trends have been over the years and see which direction you're going. I think that's much sounder.
With the tighter financial times that might be ahead and borrowers perhaps starting to crimp down a little bit, is there something that potential borrowers need to know about when they go into the bank or when they start to get everything together to think about applying for a loan?
Well, I really think that it's important to keep the communication going. Tendencies, if things get a little tight, are to withdraw and just assume things might work out for the best. And my opinion is that it's better to be proactive and to put everything on the table and to explain, this is where we are, this is what I think is going to happen, I don't know what's going to happen, this is what I think will happen, this is how I think it's going to work out. And most of the time, lenders are in the business to loan money and make profits on the interest. So it's their business to want to make a loan. But they have to feel that they know what's going on. They have to feel that their collateral is safe and in good condition. They have to be kept appraised of what the situation is.
On the Market Journal website, you can find Dave's recent Cornhusker Economics article on working with your banker. Also, we mentioned when we talked with Dave at Husker Harvest Days in September, there will be upcoming meetings on farm succession. The first is next week on Wednesday, December 2nd in Hartington. That event runs from 10 until 3 and is free to attend. We'll put more information about the event online, including an 800 number where you can get more information about future meetings. Nebraska Extension forage specialist Bruce Anderson says you could be wasting hay due to poor feeding techniques. Bruce says when hay is fed with no restrictions, cattle can waste 25 to 45% of it by trampling, over-consuming, or using it for bedding. But there are steps you can take to minimize losses.
For starters, never provide more than 1 day's supply at a time. Research has shown that when cows are fed a 4-day supply, they will overeat and waste 20 to 30% more hay than when they are fed 1 day at a time. This adds up to $25 to $50 more per cow over a 4-month feeding period. Best of all is to feed only what the livestock will clean up in one meal, so nothing is left over to be wasted. Be sure to provide sufficient space, though, for all animals to eat at once so boss cows don't stop timid cows from getting their fair share.
Bruce says you can also restrict cattle from hay by using bale racks or rings. If you unroll or grind and feed on the ground, Bruce says you can use an electric fence to keep cattle from using it as bedding. During the first week of December, Nebraska Extension will be holding a series of meetings aimed at improving corn and soybean production efficiency and sustainability. The Field to Market workshops will show growers a web-based tool called the Field Print Calculator that helps measure, for example, resources used in production versus other producers across the state and country. Nebraska Extension educator Randy Pryor is part of the Nebraska Extension team conducting the workshops. We talked with Randy earlier this week about the events and the Field to Market organization.
Field to Market is an organization of about 70 companies and also universities, conservation groups, companies involved with the food chain. It's a collaborative group that have an interest of making things better in the future on various sustainability measures.
With that, you have a field print calculator that you're working with and other farmers around the area are working with, and you specifically have a background of tracking products. Tell me about that in Saline County.
Yes, I'm very proud of the fact in Saline County we had several years ago 23 producers that shared information about producing corn with the Crete Mill, Bunge, and the Kellogg Corporation. They came together collaboratively and shared information on different sustainability measures, and they learned from each other from that project.
What's the benefit to a food company to do this?
Well, certainly there's some companies out there that would like to make marketing claims that their food is more sustainable. But also I think at the root of this is companies would like to have a sustainable supply of food and water in the future. And you look at what needs to happen between now and the year 2050, where we need to double the amount of food raised on essentially the similar amount of land. We really have a challenge ahead with sustainability issues.
So throughout this organization, there's like I mentioned, the field print calculator. What does that calculator do?
Well, the field print calculator, which we had input in to help improve it a couple years ago, they look at 7 sustainability measures. So they look at land use, water quality, water efficiency, soil erosion and conservation, greenhouse gas, and also energy use. Thanks for that one. So those are the 7 measures we can benchmark, and we can look at it on a per acre basis or on a per bushel basis.
And then they're judging it based off of other producers' uses across the state and across the country?
Yes, that's a good point. With the field print calculator, a producer can compare himself with state averages and national benchmarks that have been made available through data that's there now. But in the future, we're going to be able to narrow this down even more so for the producer. For instance, in our new project that Nebraska Extension is involved with, we're going to be able to share that data back to the producer so that he could use that criteria. It's kind of like the Nebraska Business Association model. Am I in the upper third? Am I average on this farm? Or am I in the lower third? What technologies are out there where I can make improvements?
You have a series of workshops coming up. Tell me who they're aimed at and why they might want to attend.
Yes, we've got 8 workshops coming up that second week in December, and I'm really excited about that. Producers can sign up for those workshops, bring their own laptop, or we'll provide the laptop. Bring somebody to help you type if you need to, and that will get them acquainted with the field print calculator, and they'll print out their first field prints and learn how to interpret those.
Do they need to bring along field records to input into the field print calculator?
Yes, basic field records, so the extension educator can get them the data input sheet in advance. And if they have some questions about that data input sheet that they might have questions, we'll cover those in the workshop. But it's really just basic production records that most people have on their records in the tractor cab or however they keep records. It's pretty basic in that respect.
Nebraska Extension will host the Field to Market workshops, which are free to attend and sponsored by the Nebraska Corn Board as well as the Nebraska Soybean Board. You are encouraged to register by December 3rd with the local Nebraska Extension office. You can find more information on the Field to Market workshops through a link on the Market Journal homepage. The November Nebraska Farmer says the Cattlemen's Ball of Nebraska is an event that unites communities every year with the common cause of funding cancer research. While that's the main purpose, this event serves as a way to promote beef as a part of a healthy diet and helps people from all parts of Nebraska experience rural life. To read about the 2016 Cattlemen's Ball of Nebraska, hosts Trevor and Tori Lenneman, and what's involved in planning an event for 5,000 people, you can check out the November Nebraska Farmer. In our previous episodes of Market Journal, we've shown you interviews from the 4-state crop insurance workshop in Grand Island, including conversations on boom-bust cycles in agriculture and possible cuts to crop insurance. This week, we'll look at how crop insurance could use big data. We discussed that topic with Terry Griffin from Kansas State and started by asking how widely used advanced technology is on the farm.
We have a lot of different statistics, and it kind of depends on which one we're talking about. If we're using GPS to automatically guide farm equipment through fields, at the service provider level, this is over 80% of service providers are offering that at the farm level. So it's almost ubiquitous. But if we think about technologies such as yield monitors and rubber technology that require a high degree of skill to make use of that information, then the adoption statistics are much lower. But one of the things we've been talking about today is big data in agriculture, telematics, pushing data between machinery and the cloud. One of the little known facts that all farmers may not be real cognizant of is that relatively new farm equipment, or just like our relatively new General Motors products, and that data has been passed between the equipment and the cloud to the manufacturer, whether we know about it or not. So it may be more widespread than we realize.
How can that data be used then for crop insurance purposes?
There's lots of opportunities for crop insurance, and especially if we redefine how crop insurance instruments are created. Yield monitor data for one thing. So if we know what the yields were in near real time, then that's going to make the crop insurance process a lot cheaper. The transaction costs will be much lower, and that'd be beneficial. And another part, if we could push planting data as crops have been planted in spring for summer crops, then that gives us a lot of information about when the crops were actually planted, was it planted in a timely manner, and so forth.
What are the hurdles to doing this, though?
Do you have a cell phone?
Yes, I do.
Internet connectivity, especially wireless in rural areas. You know, Nebraska, Kansas, where a lot of acres of row crops are. You know, we've all struggled with the internet connection or even being able to make a phone call. Well, think about if we're trying to make real-time connectivity through those same systems from rural Nebraska, that's a major barrier.
How much of a concern is privacy?
Privacy, whether it's real concerns or perceived concerns, it's very important. So I would argue that connectivity issues and privacy security issues are the two main barriers that we're going to have for crop insurance.
How long do you think we are away from doing something like this?
What's the next question? My forecast hasn't been working lately. You know, some would argue that 2015 would have been the year for this to happen, but maybe it won't be. So, you know, maybe a 3 to 5 year process, and the internet connectivity is going to be a function of private service providers pushing the technology to more rural areas where there's not a lot of demand for voice or text.
Do you think crop insurance companies would be behind this?
I think crop insurance companies can especially benefit from this technology and be very supportive of this, not only from USDA RMA level, but from the private providers as well.
Similarly beneficial to farmers?
I would suggest yes, especially if the reduced transaction costs are shared across both parties.
You can find Terry's presentation from the crop insurance workshop on big data through a link on the Market Journal website. Now, with this week's weather forecast, here's Nebraska Extension state climatologist Al Dutcher.
Well, folks, here we again for the weekly forecast. The university is shut down for the Thanksgiving holiday, so I thought this would be an appropriate time for us to bring you an update on the current El Niño event and where we kind of see things progressing as we go through the winter period as the official forecasts for CPC have been released. Now, it doesn't mean that this is necessarily going to be the trends that we're going to show you, but overall we are looking at a fairly significant event. In fact, by any account, the first strongest event since 1951 records were officially taking. We do know that there are some guidelines that we use for El Niños and in terms of the probabilities across the central and southern United States, so I thought you'd bring you up to date on those. So let's take a look at this El Nino event as it's progressed. And this is our current picture of the sea surface temperature deviations. And this is core area right here that we're looking at for the El Nino signature. We're running about 5 to 7 degrees above normal in terms of temperatures. In Celsius, running about 2 to 3 degrees for the entire basin above normal. Within individual pockets, we're approaching about 3 degrees Celsius above normal. Now, I'll draw your attention up to the Gulf of Alaska because this is very important. This was the area the last couple of years where we have seen a orange blob, or what everybody is considered to call the blob, where we had a large area of above normal temperatures, and that was creating a ridge in the upper atmosphere that was blocking the movement of moisture into California and is responsible to some of the intensification throughout the last 2 years. What we have seen is this blob has disappeared, and we're starting to see a signature of below normal sea surface temperatures, and eventually with the current, some of that colder than normal water will start to move its way along the western United States Gulf or coast and region and move down toward the equatorial region, and that just helps shrink this. In fact, the Bureau of Meteorology from Australia is indicating that they believe that this will stay in effect pretty much through the spring period before we start to see the dissipation into the summer. So with that in thought, we do know that there are some statistics that we see that are pretty strong across the country. The first one I'll draw your attention to is that we see warmer than normal conditions, not only in December, and this is our projection for this December from CPC, mostly centered over the Great Lakes and the Upper Plains, but we see below normal temperatures, which is a common occurrence across the southern plains as the southern jet begins to become more established. As we go into the precipitation forecast, this is a typical El Nino signal with above normal precipitation, essentially from the desert southwest eastward into the southeast and then moving up the eastern seaboard with below normal precipitation over the northern Rockies and the Great Lakes region. Now, if we go to the 3-month forecast, it takes us December through February, we see the same trend, above normal temperatures, below normal to our south. And in terms of precipitation, we see a very strong signal for above normal precipitation from southern California eastward into western Texas, and a weaker chance for above normal precipitation going all the way up in through Nebraska with that signature for below normal precipitation over the Great Lakes and the Pacific Northwest. So when we look at the snowfall, the one thing we'll notice is that there is a below normal snowfall signature in the upper Great Lakes, and some of that extends into the northern plains, with the southwestern part of the state showing a slight increase in above normal snowfall. More importantly, February through March and April, we see a strong signal for above normal snowfall across southern Nebraska, southwest, and the panhandle of Nebraska. So stay tuned, it could get interesting this winter.
Thanks, Al. Today's interviews can be found individually on the Market Journal website and through the Market Journal mobile app. They include information on cattle markets, working with your banker, improving efficiency in crop production, and using big data in crop insurance. As always, you can keep up with Market Journal during the week by following us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Next week, Jeff Peterson will be our corn and soybean market analyst. Until then, thanks for watching. I'm Jeff Wilkerson. We'll see you next week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine, and major funding for Market Journal is provided by the Nebraska Corn Board. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.